Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Blowing a hoolie out there this morning. I know, heard from Mark, not Mark, from Andy Darvell just a few moments ago to say that he is basically he's down at the moment. No lifting today because of the strong winds. So we people, it is our job to keep him entertained. First off the mark here this morning at 7:50 more was Dan Cullen. Good morning, you. Another fabulous day for ducks and fish. Yes, and anyone that owns a kite, I would say, blowing, as my mum used to say, blowing a hooligan out there. Who else do we have here? There you are. There is Andy Darvell saying, morning, morning, morning. Too windy today to lift, so hopefully an early day. Well, from your lips to God's ears. And Gary Muirhead says, sun is shining in God's country. Probably still minus 47 up in Scotland, but good morning to you, Gary. Ken Hatcher is here as well. Good morning. He's got rain. We've got a bit of that as well. Andy Darvell says, now for the first coffee of the day. Oh, it's gone 10 o'clock. First coffee now? Oh, no, I couldn't function without coffee before that. And Mark Whiting is here as well. Morning, Mark. And I think I already mentioned him, but Gary Muirhead is here as well. We have we almost have a full contingent. No sign of Chris Ford or Jim turning it or any of the other usual suspects, but I'm sure they'll be along forthwith. Very quickly, I want to show you something. Both Construction Index and Construction Inquirer are carrying this story this morning, and it is this. I'm going to get where I can see it. UK cement production falls to a 75-year low. According to this article, energy regulation and labour costs are combining to stifle the UK's cement sector. UK cement production has hit its lowest level since 1950, according to new data from the Mineral Products Association. The UK made 7.3 million tonnes rather of cement in 2024, which is around half of what it produced in 1990. Meanwhile, imports have soared as UK plants fall under foreign ownership. The drop in cement production puts the government's house building and infrastructure plans at risk, the MPA is warning, since cement is vital for building foundations and structures. Up to 750,000 tonnes of cement could be required for a project like Sizewell C, and nearly 8,000 tonnes for a new hospital, while between 3 and 5 tonnes are needed to build a traditional 4-bedroom family home. Not entirely sure what to make of all of that. Obviously not good news. It kind of puts us at the mercy, doesn't it? Puts us at the mercy of foreign markets. Obviously, if we're importing cement, we could be quite easily held to ransom. But I wonder if it's also an indicator of falling demand. Wouldn't be the first indicator of falling demand. So anybody got any thoughts on that? Love to hear from you. Gary Muirhead says he's got the air conditioning on. You might notice that I'm actually wearing 2 layers today. I've got the Henley on and I've got the denim shirt on as well. I wouldn't say it was necessary, but it did feel a bit too cold for t-shirts this morning. Andy Darvell says, I always have a cup of tea on the way to work and then coffee about 9 to 10. See, I'm the other way around. I literally open my eyes, I go down the stairs, I whack the kettle on, first cup of coffee, and then from that point on, I switch to tea. Other way around. I need something to kickstart the old heart first thing in the morning. And Jim Turner has just arrived saying, morning peeps. And Lou Carney, there you are. Dan Saff, she had the heating on yesterday. Gary, you don't know how good you've got it. Is it a double denim day? Well, Gary, it is. However, bear with me. Bear with me just 1 second. I'm going to rearrange some cables here. They're denim. They are denim. They are definitely denim, but they're sort of beige. Does that make me bad? I don't know. I'm kind of out of touch with these things. Are you double denim today, like Bewitched? No, the material is denim, but I don't think it counts. I'm not wearing what they refer to as the Canadian tuxedo because I am mixing and matching my colours. I don't just throw these things together, you know. There is some. Well, there's about 3 seconds of thought goes into what I'm wearing, and most of that thought is what's clean and what is ironed. It's about as clever as it gets. Anyway, people, got a packed show for you again today, and I'm going to tell you now It's a weird one. We've got our morning monologue. Now I've got myself all caught up with cables. I may have to do that while I'm off here. Landfill tax. There is a consultation out at the moment that could see landfill tax for construction and demolition companies go up by, now brace yourself for this, could go up by 3,000%. Why is nobody talking about that? The consultation is closed. The government has already been out to the market, and presumably the market has responded. But why is nobody talking about the threat from a 3,000% increase in landfill tax? Weird, right? Jim Turner says it's lovely and cool and trying to rain in Harworth. Bloody lovely. Well, Jim, I hope it tries a little bit harder and that some of our rain heads up your way. Mainly so that, obviously, to fertilise your land, but also to get it out of here. I'd quite like to not have the rain. Makes walking the dog somewhat unpleasant. Anyway, people, we're going to get to all of the landfill tax stuff at the end because that's the subject of my morning monologue today. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. Oh, we'll get on to the rundown for today's show, but I do need to address this one from Andy Darvell. You do ironing, he says. We just fold as soon as it comes off the line or the heated air. Saves loads of time on ironing. Only ever iron shirts or trousers if I'm going out, which doesn't happen very much anymore. I have several confessions to make. I mean, I did iron this shirt this morning because, it needed it. Looked, when I got it out of my wardrobe, looked like a testicle. Couldn't be wearing that. But also, and this is where the confession comes in, I sit here on a daily basis, usually in a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, on a fairly regular basis. Only the front of that item of clothing has been ironed. I realise that makes me incredibly lazy, but the way I figure it, I mean, obviously that's the bit that you can see, but also I'm sat here with my back against a chair. Even if I fully steam iron my t-shirt, by the time I finish this show, an hour and a half time, it looks wrinkled anyway. So I figured, what the hell? I'm not doing that anymore. So yes, I'm not at the front, pristine. Round the back, like a testicle. Jim Turner says that's the Mrs. Department. Yeah, but good to see he is part of the enlightened group on the show. I have to say, I don't actually mind ironing. In fact, quite like ironing. If I can stick my AirPods in and stand there and do a bunch of ironing, in the run up to a holiday or something like that, where I've got a lot of clothes to get ready at once, don't mind that at all. Don't mind that at all. What have we got? Yes, it is Wednesday, the 3rd of September. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition and the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, XCMG's lean green mining machine. We're going to allow you to experience the Gehl force. Gehl, but you get the idea. Scraping by with K-Tec, plus, and Magni. Magni goes full power mode as well. Plus, in my morning monologue, how a planned hike in landfill tax could torpedo margins in both demolition and construction. 3,000% hike. That's what we're talking about. Before we do any of that, I do need to very quickly remind you of the question of the day. I've just pressed the wrong button and everything's gone weird. Here's the question of the day. Yeah, what is your biggest work-related regret? That's our question of the day today. Did you take a job with the promise of more money, more free time, and better conditions, only to find out that the grass wasn't actually greener on the other side? Did you turn down a job that turned out to be a dream position? Got to be honest, I was offered a job that would have required me to relocate to California many, many years ago. Unfortunately, the job came just at the same time I was getting married. All a bit too much, you know. Yes, I take you to be my lawfully married wife. Now pack your bags. We're going to California for the rest of our lives. Bit much, so I turned it down. On the plus side, I wouldn't be doing this. On the downside, I'm living in the UK rather than California. Horses for courses. Let's have a look. What do we got here? Ken Hatcher. Biggest regrets. Not buying my own backhoe 30 years ago. Yeah. If only you could wind the clock back, eh? If only you could wind the clock back. Andy Darvell says, I wanted to be a commercial pilot when I left school, and I still do. Just didn't push myself enough to do it. Still looking to get my private license for light aircraft, though. Keep it going, Andy. Keep it going. And the costs are astronomical. I bet they are. I bet they are, and I bet they've hiked as well with the rise in the cost of fuel and aviation fuel and that kind of thing. Dan Cullen is back. He was here and he went away and he's back. Good morning, Dan. And Gary Muirhead says 3 weeks on Saturday till we go to Benidorm for 2 weeks, and the wife has everything ironed already. Will it still look ironed in 3 weeks' time? It probably will. I've got to be honest. That's one of the things I leave to the very last minute, and I realise it's a false economy. When we went off on our cruise, I did most of my ironing the day before we jumped on a plane. And but the basic thinking was, if I leave it to the last minute before I put it in the suitcase, by the time we get to the other end, it might still look like it was ironed. It didn't. It didn't. It looked like I hadn't ironed it at all. Dan Cullen says, Gary, what, another holiday? No less than he deserves. He works very, very hard, I'll have you know. Jim Turner, question of the day, not buying my own machine and starting up on my own. Before I add any mortgage and outgoings, I'll do it if I'm ever affluent enough. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. And I do wonder about that. I mean, obviously, it's a weird thing. I do think we've kind of lost some of our desire for owner operators. You know, back when I first started writing about construction, you know, back in the late 80s, owner operators sort of made up I wouldn't say the lion's share, but they were a really, really, really important part of the market. And now it seems a time when I think we are all a little more interested in self-employment. I think finance is available, you know, in a much more much more readily available from the likes of JCB, Cat Finance, and people like that. And yet, I wonder if the proper owner operator, as I remember it, can actually compete with the Lynches and the Flannerys and the Sunbelts and what have you. I wonder if they can. I would imagine all of those three that I just named must have enormous buying power. They must be able to buy machines for virtually nothing, as against somebody that's buying it for themselves. Question of the day, Dan, also not buying an excavator and getting a team together. It seems to be a common thing, doesn't it? It does seem to be a common theme. Gary says, I don't care what I look like when I'm on holiday, when you can get a beer for a single euro. Yeah, after 4 or 5 San Miguel's, frankly, what you look like doesn't really matter that much anymore, does it? It's a fair comment. Keep those coming in. We'd like to know what your biggest job regrets are. Nothing too serious, I hope. What do we got next? Oh, yes, we're heading off to China to see the latest mining machine from the fine folks at XCMG. I shall show it to you forthwith. Just before I crack on with that, I do want to mention Jim Turner. Jim, pay attention. I'm speaking directly to you. You sent me a message, or you kind of you looped me into a thing that you did on LinkedIn. There's a young lady looking for some job. I can't even remember what you refer, some experience basically, but in the nursing and the care industry. My sister-in-law is actually in the care industry. I've dropped her a line this morning. I don't suppose for one moment she'll be able to do anything about it. But Jim, I did get the message. I am trying to do something about it. I'll keep you posted. That's what I'm saying right now. What have we got in the chat? Are there many XCMGs out in the wild? Not that many here. Go a little bit further afield, and you only have to go as far as somewhere like Turkey, and they're breeding. They are breeding in the wild, and I'm fairly sure they're going to be at plant works this time around as well. If Lou's still here, I'm sure she can confirm or deny that. Anyway, regardless of whether they're at Plant Works or not, chances are they won't be bringing anything quite this big. I'll come back to that in just a moment. I want to go back to Gary on our question of the day. Any work regrets? Gary, also not going into business together with a good friend of mine. I was putting my house on the line. Too much of a risk? Yep, fully understand that. Now, I can confirm, obviously, we have just watched XCMG. XCMG will, 100% will be at Plant Works. Thanks, Lou, for confirming that. And more than that, not only are they going to be there, they're going to be there in some style. Apparently, they're launching 2 new compact machines, the XC7 TV12 compact track loader and the XC908 HST compact wheel loader. First time in the UK. If you are going to Plant Works, go by the XCMG stand. I mean, go and see Lou first. You know, you've got to get your priorities right with these things. Go and see Lou first, and when you've done with Lou, go and have a look at XCMG. We've had a comment there from Andy Darvell. That's a lump, 120 tons. It's actually 121. You were very close, very, very close. Jim Turner said 200 to 300 ton bracket. No, 121 tons in your English money. Dan said that's some piece of kit. Electric too. Yeah, absolutely electric too. And if you want to pre-register for Plant Works, that's where you do it. Plantworks.co.uk. yourticketpurchase.com. Do it for that link. What do I win because I was 1 ton out? Well, see, if you'd have been on the money, if you'd have said 120 tons, we'd have dancing girls and free money to give away. Haven't said that for a while, but you were a ton out, and rules is rules. I'm afraid, Andy. Chris Ford has just arrived. Good morning, gang. Hiding from the slasher man this morning. Who the hell is the slasher man? Now, Gary asked this question. I wonder how many of these XCMG or Chinese machines will last the distance, and if there'll be any vintage plant shows in years to come. I think they will. Don't forget, those machines that machine that we've just seen. I realise it's electric, it's an early generation, but XCMG machines are widely used across mines in far-flung places, including places like Mongolia. The application doesn't get any tougher than that. And trust me, you don't need me to tell you this. People that are buying equipment for mines, their profitability depends 100% on availability of machines. They don't buy machines that go wrong and let them down. They really don't. Content with media. I don't know if that's Peter or Lucas who've just joined us over on Instagram. Good morning to you chaps. Hope you're both fit and well. What have we got? What have we got? Jim Turner says, if I did go out my own, I wouldn't necessarily be running out to buy new machines. Yeah. Trouble is that's getting harder, isn't it? It is getting harder, with the regulations on emissions and emissions controls and that kind of thing. It's a subject we've touched on, particularly if you're working, I think, in an urban environment. If you are, in London, Birmingham, Manchester, there was a time you could go and go out and buy yourself a pretty rough and ready, smoky as all balls machine, and that would get you started, get you a few quid before you took on another person and another machine. Can't do that anymore. Not so bad where you are, Jim. A bit out in the wild, you probably get away with it for a little bit longer. It's a good question. How many modern day new equipment will last as long as their predecessors? My take on that, and listen, you guys spend a lot more time up close with the machines. I think the machines themselves will. I think if you bought off the top of my head a Cat D8 today, or a JCB 370, or a Komatsu PC 210, or one of those machines, I think the core of it, the undercarriage, the upper structure, the boom, the dipper, I think all of those would last the test of time. I think the real telltale is what happens with all of those electronics and all the sensors and the servos, the stuff that can go wrong and can't necessarily be fixed by man with spanner. That's where I have a question mark. I do have a question mark about that. Anyway, people, we've got more to bring you. Yes, we're going to experience Gehl Falls in a minute. It's. I was trying to do Gehl. Yeah, you get the idea.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yep, Dan, I agree with you. Too much technical computers and sensors. Yeah. And I do wonder if I wouldn't say it would necessarily prevent future generations from rebuilding or remanufacturing a machine. But if you've got to replace all of those gubbins, is it worthwhile? Is it economically viable? It's not like you could have a project yourself, by and large, is it? I mean, somebody like a gym, somebody practical like a gym could have an old machine that, over weekends and over the winter period, he could gradually rebuild and put it back together again and everything else. Is he really going to get involved in electronics? All right, with a spanner, are you going to be quite so good with electronics? Probably not. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Let's show you a few Gehl machines, actually. Yes, experience the Gehl Falls.
like you.
Gehl, works like you. Hardly at all then. Brilliant. I'm going to say very quick good morning. Alu Group just joined us over on Instagram. Love your work, guys. Alu Group, or Alu Group, as I should probably pronounce it. Good morning to you. Also, good morning to Garvin over on Mostly Diggers over on Instagram as well. Andy Darvell says, are Gehl German? No, they're not. The machines are actually manufactured in the States, but they're owned by Manitou, so they're American and French. Make of that what you will. Gehl and the Breakfast Show, a force to be reckoned with. Well done, Dan Cullen. And yes, you're right. Gehl does sound German, but it's not. Question of the day, Chris Ford. Not putting more into a pension, but then again, I started early with 2 and put as much in as I could afford at the time, but never increase the payments. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. Indeed, indeed. Jim Turner says that backhoe loader looks like an old Massey. It did. You're absolutely right. And speaking of Jim, again, going back to the question of the day, which is business regrets or work regrets, I wouldn't be making a beeline for cities or big contractors. I'd be aiming on at small builders and firms that way the owners are much easier to visit if they don't pay. Very diplomatically put. Thank you for that, Jim. What have we got coming up? Oh, yeah, we're going to be scraper action in a second. Back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, time to look at scrapers, which is never a bad way to spend part of your morning. This is K-Tec doing what K-Tec does.
On this particular job site, we're moving a little over 300,000 in-place yards. We have a 4,400-foot haul distance that is kept up by our RG14 road grader. We have 3 K-Tec scraper train sets, 33 cubic yard each pan. We're also running an ox block as a push tractor on this job, which has helped us increase our loads. We have drastically reduced our timing in the cut, and we're guaranteed heap loads every single round. Hi, my name is William Lorenz, president of WL Contracting out of San Antonio, Texas. We've been running K-Tec pans since 2018, and we've had a lot of success running train sets here in Central Texas. We've recently moved into larger civil and mining operations, million cubic yards plus. And that's the direction we're headed. These K-Tec pans really help us a lot. Load fast, load easy, less wear and tear on equipment, and they're great for long haul distances. They load very well for the size of pan they are. The cycle times are great. You can turn in a very short amount of time with them. We've been very satisfied with the K-Tec pans. I was contacted by our dealer about purchasing an ox block, and while being hesitant at first, I was finally convinced to give it a try, and I can't say that we would ever run another job without a push tractor. Our time in the cut is drastically reduced. Our load count is increased by a factor of almost 15%. We have increased our cubic yardage hauled every day. We have also cut down on tire wear. So we have a lot less tire spin from the pull tractor. We have a lot less tire spin from the push tractor. It's been a great investment so far. One of the best advantages of the K-Tec is there's only 2 points to grease every day. All the rest of the components on it are wearable bushings that do not need to be replaced very often. Their cutting edges are able to be dropped down, the center cutting, frostbite, as well as the side cutters beside them. You get a lot of life out of these cutting edges that are on these machines. I'd recommend K-Tec to anybody looking to run pans. The K-Tecs load easy, their serviceability is excellent, the product support is great. You can call the guys at the factory and they can give you any input you need, and they listen if you have suggestions for anything that needs to be changed.
Pretty smart, right? Dan Cullen says, sounds a lot, 4,400 feet. It's almost a mile. It's about 0.8 of a mile. So it's a fair old haul, which explains precisely this. They're using tractors for push and pull instead of a dozer. obviously faster getting back to the beginning with a tractor than a dozer. But imagine the tractor or the track wear, the undercarriage wear on a tractor doing a mile each way would be absolutely phenomenally expensive. Jim Turner, going back to this, I know a fellow that runs 2 old JCB 3CXs. They owe him absolutely nothing, and they'll do just what a brand new one will, and will keep doing so as well. Wonder, would a tractor be more effective? I think on that sort of whole road, yes, or on that sort of whole distance, should I say. Shorter haul, probably the dozer, I would say, but yeah. Listen, necessity is the mother of invention. I'm always impressed when people take a long, hard look at these things and think, actually, there's a better way of doing this. I'm going to say good morning, good evening to Frank over at Diacon Demo, joining us over on Instagram, all the way from a land down under. One final film for you. It is Magni telehandlers and their full power mode. I'll show you all about it in just a moment. Andy Darvell, I realise you're a crane man and not a telehandler man, but you'll know all about this. When you need that little bit more lift power, like this.
Today we are introducing a new feature that will completely change the way you operate with your Magni FTH, the full power mode. By activating the full power mode, it is now possible to lock the boom extension at the desired height, obtaining an optimized load shot. If you try to lift a suspended load with a classic telehandler boom extension, the machine will have the limit imposed by the dynamic effect of this tension. Locking the extension, the machine is free to use its full lifting power. This allows the machine to reach greater distances while maintaining maximum stability and control. Full power mode. Unleash your true potential.
Pretty smart. Andy Darvell, what are you making of that? While you're thinking about it, Jim Turner says this: put a fixed pushing button on each pull tractor and they could load in pairs, pushing each other. Nosy stuff, does that, Jim? Nosy stuff. Anyway, that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, then do please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Make sure you nail down your toupee because it's blowing a gale out there. I hope to see you again very soon. Tomorrow will be good. If you do have the time and the inclination, however, I will be back in just a moment after this. I've got to tell you something that seems to be landing with very little fanfare, but that could quietly blow a huge hole in budgets up and down the demolition and construction supply chain. It currently costs £4.05 per tonne to dump inert waste, rock and concrete at a UK landfill. In the grand scheme of things, it's a small tariff compared to the £126 charge for the disposal of general waste. And besides, those in the field of demolition send materials to landfill only as a last resort. They'd much prefer to recycle, reuse, or better still, resell those materials at a profit rather than shipping them out at a cost. Now, though, there's a very real possibility that the government could wipe away that lower rate entirely. The government is currently analysing the feedback from a formal consultation that proposes a tax escalator so that by 2030, that £4.05 goes the same route as standard waste. A full £126 per tonne. I'll save you doing the maths. That's a 3,000% hike in landfill tax. Now, the plan is to phase it in. Even if the government presses ahead, that full 3,000% is still 5 years away. It's being spun as simplification, anti-fraud, and probably a nudge for us all to think a little more circular. But for the demolition and construction sector, this is going to feel like a punch in the gut if the plans in the consultation are given the green light. These additional costs aren't abstract. According to industry experts, that landfill tax hike could add another £20,000 or more to the bottom line during the construction of a new home, although it does raise some pretty serious questions about the wastefulness and the profligacy of the house building sector. We're not just talking a few hundred quid, we're talking tens of thousands per build. House builders are saying that it could multiply their entire landfill tax bills from just under £1 million to well over £100 million per year. And let's not forget, this comes at a time when the government has already staked its already questionable reputation on delivering 1.5 million new homes in the next 5 years. And this isn't going to hit just house builders. Quarry operators are raising red flags too. They need inert materials, soil, chalk, clay, for restoration. Those waste materials currently carry almost no tax, so they currently make restoration technically and financially feasible. Strip that exemption away, and you start scuppering not just the bottom line, but the land itself. Empty quarries, mothballed, no backfilling, derelict rather than regenerated. What's unsettling to me, at least, is that very little of this appears to be in the public eye. The consultation period is over and is now in the lap of the government, but no one's sounding the alarm bells. No one's storming Downing Street in an outrage. It's like the red diesel debacle all over again. Where is the industry outcry, the trade media coverage, the industry notices, and the trade association dissent? Obviously, the industry's primary concern will be about an escalation in costs. But what about the unintended consequences? The biggest red flag here, surely, is fly tipping. Councils are already warning that if disposal becomes too expensive, dirt, bricks, plasterboard, and other inert materials will no longer go through proper channels. Some might dump it illegally. Other waste might get reclassified or shoved into household collections where it doesn't belong. Criminal gangs will form profitable yet illegal waste removal companies, and taxpayers, as always, will foot the bill. In response to this consultation, the local government association says their budgets are already stretched and they're ill-equipped to deal with a further surge in waste crime. But the broader question that nags me is, why has this flown under the radar? Maybe landfill tax is seen as mundane, background noise amidst a cacophony of regulation. But while everyone's looking the other way, this is an additional tax that could torpedo profit margins and potentially render construction projects, including the creation of vital new homes and infrastructure, economically unfeasible. So here's the heads up. Let me do that again. So here's the heads up for all of us. This is on the radar. If you run sites, quote jobs, or manage demolition or construction projects, take note. The industry stood on the sidelines and watched while the long-standing red diesel levy was revoked and removed at a cost of millions. With this hike in landfill tax, we could see yet another massive cost hitting the industry's bottom line at a time when we can least afford it. And put simply, a hole in the ground could put a hole in your profit margin. You've been warned. I had a look this morning. That's the morning model I've done, by the way. I had a look this morning. The consultation was shared through the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, and they basically said to their members that there's a consultation going on. Fill in the form if you get a moment, which is fine. That's part of their job, is to disseminate information. But at no point in their round robin email to their members did they say, guys, you heads up, 3,000% hike in landfill tax over the next 5 years. And as I say, as far as I can see, no other mention. Now, I did share something over on our WhatsApp group last night while I was researching this last night. Came across an article by a guy called Ben Hopkinson. If you're on our WhatsApp group, you can go and have a look at that when you get a moment, which gives you a bit more detail. If you want to read that, also, when this show is over, I'll be uploading this monologue as a standalone article on LinkedIn and Demolition News and various other places. And I've got a link at the end of that to Ben Hopkinson as well. but a 3,000% potential tax hike, and nobody is saying a word. Now, it is a consultation. The consultation closed at the end of July. There is a possibility. There is a possibility that the government may come back and say, yes, we've seen the error of our ways. We've suddenly realised that if we do this, this could impact upon our ability to build all those 1.5 million new homes that we so desperately need to salvage what little credibility we have left. Or they might say, bollocks, we're not going to hit those targets anyway, crack on. In which case, demolition and construction firms are staring down the barrel of a 3,000% hike in landfill tax costs. I want to go back very quickly on this, and Jim, I will come to your point, which is very valid. But I also want to go back. While I was researching this, they were talking about the potential cost to house building. A new home could cost another £20,000 in landfill tax if this 3,000% goes through. But bearing in mind that the vast majority of homes these days are at least partly either modular or they're basically jigsaw form. It's a 4-bedroom home. We need this many bricks, that much plasterboard. Where are they generating, or how, or why are they generating enough waste that their costs could escalate to 20 grand per home? What on earth are they doing that is wasting that amount of material? And again, on the demolition end, the demolition industry, because there's money to be made out of it, have become extremely adept at taking pretty much anything, with a notable exception of PCBs and asbestos and that kind of thing. They can take pretty much anything from a building or a bridge or a structure and find some way of reusing it, recycling it, reselling it. It would appear that construction companies are just, this is not news to me, but this is further confirmation, they are wasting tons and tons and tons of material on each new build. I remember being told years ago about when a house builder is building a new house. Let's say they're building a new house, and the calculations, if they've done plenty of these before, and the calculation says that they need, let's work in round terms, they need 1,000 house bricks for a home. And somebody says, well, some of those will arrive broken, better order 1,100. And somebody says, the last lot were worse than that, better order 1,200. And then by the time that gets to site, somebody looks at it and goes, you best make it 1,500. You potentially got 500 bricks that have arrived for no good reason. Now, as I say, within the demolition industry, we have a structure in place whereby, we will take those away. In demolition terms, we'll clean them up, make them, pallet them up, and we will resell them. What's happening with construction companies? Are they putting them back on a lorry and taking them to a storage unit somewhere? We might need these next week or next month or whatever it might be. Or are they just chucking them in a skip and hoping that nobody notices? Because if we're talking about a cost of 20 grand or more per new home, there's a problem there, isn't there? Jim Turner says that the tax should be on miles travelled and for material coming in and going out. The issue you've got, and again, I mean, maybe this is all part of the master plan. If you went back maybe 10, 15 years, the UK had 50, 60, maybe 100 major sort of landfill sites. Not the little ones, but, major landfill sites. They then closed a load of them. They basically licensed a lot of them out of existence to the point where you've ended up with, rather than 100, you've got 20. So all of a sudden, you've now got to haul that material further away. Now, if you happen to be working in London, there isn't a landfill in London. You're looking at hauling material out to Essex or to Kent or to Surrey or somewhere like that. You've got to go a fair old distance. I would imagine that's even worse. If you get out into the sticks, what are you talking about? Whereas you used to have a landfill site 20 miles up the road, it could be 100 mile away now. And again, we licensed to the point of extinction a lot of these landfill sites for environmental reasons. And landfill sites do do have their environmental challenges with leachate and methane and all that kind of thing. But if you've done away with those landfills for the sake of the environment, and then you're further harming the environment by having to travel further with each new wagon of waste, did you really take a step forward, or did you stay the same, or did you actually take a big bleeding step backwards? Dan says it'll be the same for diesel. No one will say a thing, so they can add 3,010% on a project. Yeah, but again, 5 years is not long. If that consultation comes back, let's say it came back tomorrow afternoon, and they said, okay, well, we by 2030 we are going to raise the cost of landfill tax for inert material from £4.5p to £126. And bearing in mind, £126 is today's price. So, but let's stick with it. But by the time 2030 rolls around, £126 could be £150. But let's stick with 126. So you've got to get from £4.05p to 126. So let's say they put, nice easy maths, they put 20% on this year, 20% next year, 20% the year after, and so on until you reach the full increase. That's going to hit tomorrow. That is going to land tomorrow. So you've got a situation. Let's talk about house builders. Let's say it costs £50,000, to build a 4-bedroom house. A modular 4-bedroom house costs £50,000 to build. They know that. They're already selling them on that basis. They've allocated land on that basis. They are even taking orders for those houses based on the fact that they cost 50,000. We can sell them for 300. As a result of this increase, their £50,000 is now £60,000. Can they go back to the market and say, that house that you were about to buy for £300,000 is now £330,000? And then the year after that, can they go back and say it's £370,000? And the year after that, they can go back and say it's £450,000. Bearing in mind the fact that traditionally, the cost of housing, obviously we're in a bit of a slump at the moment, that is dictated more by the economy than it is by supply and demand. If everyone's feeling good about the world and they're feeling very, very positive about their income, house prices go up. If everybody's feeling very negative, much as they are at the moment, house prices go down. You could have a situation, bearing in mind, we've got a Labour government that we're stuck with for the next few years. The economy could be saying, could be pushing down and pushing down and pushing down house prices. And the cost of waste disposal is actually saying, no, houses are going to be even more expensive. The entire nation is in decline. We've got an economy that is basically either in or heading towards recession. House prices should be dropping, but because of the cost of landfill tax, house prices are actually going up. And nobody's talking about it. Do you not find that bizarre? That was, 3,000% sort of rocked me on my heels, I have to say. But the biggest thing that shocked me was the fact that, as I say, I had to look through, and the local government association have said a bit, the Minerals Producers Association have said a bit. The NFDC circulated details of where to find the consultation document, but nobody's standing up and saying, guys, you do see what they're trying to do here. And bearing in mind, this is what is it, a year after the red diesel debacle, where we're all, the entire industry sat on its hands. They might take away the red diesel levy. Well, that could be expensive. That could double our fuel costs at a time when we really can't afford it. Should we do something about it? I think we probably should. Should we? When should we do something? Fuck me, they've done it. And then the entire industry went, our fuel costs have just gone through the bleeding roof. It was only after it happened that the industry woke up, and we're walking blindfold again. We're like lambs to the slaughter. There should be representation going to government saying, if you actually want any hope whatsoever of maintaining not even your plucked out of your arse figures for house building, new builds, but if you want to actually maintain current levels of house building, you need to take a really big fucking step back from this, because what you're about to do is going to make a lot of these new houses unaffordable to build and unaffordable to buy. Where is the outrage? Jim Turner says, not many jobs balance out the muck produced with the finished levels. Always plenty of muck to take off site. Dan says, exactly. They all say their bit, but still don't take action when needed. Surely. Now, when you think about all that could be affected by this, we've talked about the Mineral Producers Association. So you're talking about the quarry operators who have to reinstate their sites. You think about all the civil engineering companies. I'm sure there must be a trade association for civil engineers, Institute of Civil Engineers, for example, the House Builders Federation, the NFDC, the Institute of Demolition Engineers. All of these organizations you would have thought, be on the phone to each other. Guys, have you seen this? This is going to be bad. Should we not club together like we didn't over red diesel? Should we not club together and say, we'd like a meeting with Keir Starmer? Keir, me old China, step away from the landfill tax. What you're about to do is going to crucify the one industry sector that guarantees employment for 3 million people per year. Do you really want to do that? You've built your entire cabinet on the basis, or your entire political reputation on the fact that you have promised and you will deliver 1.5 million new homes in the next 5 years. What you're about to do by raising that landfill tax will scupper that, even after it's already been scuppered by skill shortages and everything else. You are basically shooting yourself in the left foot, reloading, taking aim and shooting yourself in the right foot. Do you really want to do that? Who is saying that outside of here? The only thing that props this shit show of an economy up is housing. They have to keep rising, as that's what these short-sighted governments think growth means. I can't see. And bearing in mind, I was talking about this to somebody a little while ago, somebody much younger than me. When I had my first mortgage, basically myself and my wife were earning fairly decent money, and we went along and said, well, we want to buy this house, and we asked for 3 times our combined income, and they quibbled a little bit, but they said yes. We got our first mortgage. Our house increased in value, which allowed us to move up and get our second house, which increased in value, which allowed us to get our third house. And the score. You apply for a mortgage now. Not only is that notion of 3 times combined income somewhat hard to get, not only is it hard to get, you also have to prove your ability to repay it. Even down to, I mean, I'm a self-employed person. I would struggle like nobody's business now to get a mortgage. Can you guarantee that you'll be able to pay it back in 5 years' time? Well, assuming that nobody finds out that I'm not actually as talented as I believe I am, and they keep paying me, yeah, I should be able to. Not good enough. We want guarantees. We want to know, despite the fact that ultimately, they have the ultimate veto in that they can repossess your house. They want you to prove not only have you got the money coming in to pay it now, but that you will have some sort of safety net in place for you to pay it back in the future. So with all of that in mind, harder and harder to get a mortgage. Times is hard. And we're talking about rising costs. And it's not, I mean, obviously, 3,000% rise in landfill tax is one thing, but you've already seen cement costs are going up, energy costs are going up, fuel costs are going up. Every new house gets more and more and more expensive. And we're talking about houses here. It's not just houses, it's roads, it's hospitals, it's schools, it's railway lines, it's whatever it is. Everything that relies on cement, materials, requires fuel to deliver those materials there, wages and everything else. Everything is getting more expensive. And we're standing by, as an industry, we're standing by allowing a potential 3,000% increase in landfill tax to be imposed on us without saying a single word. Not a word. I lambs to the slaughter, people. That's the biggest problem in this industry. No companies talk or get together and fight against the issue because they're competing against each other for projects. There was a time, and again, my area of expertise is very much in the demolition sphere. There was a time when things like the 2008-2009 recession, the NFTC got very lucky in that the president at the time was Dave Darcy at Erith, who, you know, hard-nosed, pretty ruthless type of business guy, but also a human being. And as soon as that recession hit, it was almost like he went, industry, let's all gather, let's help each other through, however that is, whatever we can do to help each other through this very, very bad situation. Let's do that. It's not like that now. Now it will be every man for himself. And I'm sure that's not peculiar to demolition. I'm sure that's exactly the same in quarrying, house building, and so on down the line. What purpose does an organisation like the Construction Leadership Council or Build UK serve if they are not calling up all of those, the NFDC, the CPA, the IDE, and all these, House Builders Federation, Master Builders Federation, all of those guys? We've got a problem. I will meet you all in London on Monday afternoon at 3:00. We need to come up with some sort of solution on this. Why is that not happening? What are they doing? They don't set up CEO meetings about costs and infrastructure issues, stand together and do something about it. No, they don't. They don't. And listen, I don't want to see anybody in the industry struggling. I'd much rather it was all rainbows and kittens and stuff like that. We've already lost 5,000 plus construction companies over the last 12, 18 months or thereabouts. I don't want to lose any more. But if we do, as a direct result of our inactivity in the face of this threat of a hike in landfill tax, we've really only got ourselves to blame. You can't say you didn't know. It's there. It's in black and white. The very fact that you didn't respond to it, either as an individual company or as an association or a cooperative of industries, the fact that you didn't respond, it's entirely on you. Now, I do question, and maybe my Google search didn't turn up everything, but I did a Google search on it, and I couldn't find anything about this landfill tax hike in all the major construction magazines. So how are people finding out about it? Are they finding out about it? Is there a demolition company watching right now that's just gone, you what now? What? From £4 and 5p to 126 quid? Hang on. And again, the NFDC, they've circulated the consultation. I can't ask. I think they should have worded it differently. I think they should have accompanied it with some warning about the sheer magnitude of what was being proposed. But that consultation notice has gone to about 130 companies, NFDC members. What about the other 400 plus demolition companies out there? Do they know? Have they been told? Has anybody contacted them? What about the house builders that aren't a member of the House Builders Federation or the Master Builders Federation or whatever? Do they know? Or are they going to wake up one day and literally arrive at the gates of their nearest landfill? I've got 30 quid in my back pocket. That'll cover it. Actually, that's $3,000. You what now? And ultimately, what is going to happen with that waste? We've already seen it with little increases in landfill tax. You put the landfill tax up, guaranteed you will see a surge in fly tipping. If you put it up by 3,000%, landfill sites will largely cease to have any business whatsoever. Country lanes and lay-bys will be filled with shit, including some shit, asbestos and the like, that we don't want dumped by the side of the road. And again, the industry and the government has shot itself in the foot, reloaded and taken aim again. Feel this is particularly a problem with companies gone under. Is there no system in place for all UK for this industry to get together and say enough is enough? CITB, NFDC? No. Again, I always preface whenever I talk about these things, I am not a conspiracy theorist. If I were, I would point out that the industry has formed itself into little silos. The NFDC, let me do this without that there. The NFDC looks after its little group of people over here, and the Institute of Demolition Engineers looks after its little group of people over here, and the Construction Plant Hire Association looks after its little group of people here. Now, that's absolutely fine. If you want to have yourself a little fiefdom, a little empire, if you want to operate in if you want to be a big fish in a tiny pond, you've gone the right way about it. But when you have a situation like this, or when you have a situation like Red Diesel, where you need numbers, it's no good the NFDC knocking on the door of Downing Street and saying, our 130 members believe this might be a bad idea for the raising of the landfill tax. What you need is 3 million people saying, oi, Kia, on your bike, sunshine. No way are we going to wear this. But we've formed ourselves, or been formed, into these little silos, and those little silos don't speak to each other. So as a result, we do not have a united front, even on a fact that is going to crucify everyone, absolutely everyone. And yet again, the only people talking about it are us. Weird, right? Weird. You might almost think, if you were conspiracy minded, you might almost think that that's a deliberate thing. You might. I mean, I wouldn't, because I don't really do conspiracies, but some might. Anyway, people, there you are. No one united because they're competing with each other. I think there are times when you need to set that aside. And Dan, I realise that is exactly the point you're making. There are 99 times out of 100, you do need to be in competition. If you're a house builder and you are after a plot of land, or you're after building a bunch of houses, and you can get there before your nearest competitor, fair play to you. That's what you do. If you're a demolition contractor and you can nick a contract out from under the nose of your nearest rival, good luck to you. I think that's absolutely fine. And that's the way the industry rolls. You're constantly in competition with each other. But that was always the idea. And, I will go back. I'll mention this again. The NFDC formed during the Blitz. Legend has it at the behest of Winston Churchill. There is no proof of that, but that's the legend. But, London is literally falling down because it has been bombed all to shit by the Luftwaffe. So somebody in government said, all of you demolition contractors in and around London, you need to get yourselves together and make these buildings safe. Don't care how you do it, don't care who does what, but you need to make these buildings safe. And as an industry, they all set aside their rivalries, came together, formed an allegiance, which became the National Federation of Demolition Contractors. And then once the war was over, it continued. But they set aside their differences and their rivalries, and their, probably quite bitter rivalries at times. They set that aside for the greater good. Here's an example of precisely why and how it should do that again. It's there. It's whether you're an NFDC member or not, whether you're an NDTG member or not, whether you're an IDE member or not, this hike in landfill tax is going to hit and sting and cause you pain. Set aside your rivalries, set aside your petty differences, set aside your local and national politics, get your heads together in a room, beat it to death, and then go and make representation to your MP or to your industry body or whatever it might be, because otherwise it's coming for everyone. Jim says, as I've said for years, all this helps is the bigger businesses. These changes will crush the SMEs. It's all aimed at helping a cashless society. Yeah, and I know this is a point you made the other day, actually, Jim. When we lose cash, the government has total control of every one of its citizens. kind of feel like they've got that now, to be honest. I mean, bearing in mind how closely scrutinized we are as a nation, the most surveilled nation in the world. You'd have thought, maybe a police state like a Russia or somebody would surveil their citizens far more closely. No, we do it more here in the UK than anywhere else in the world. Big Brother is watching, and he's watching everything. Everything you do, Big Brother is there. And on that note, as I say, not a conspiracy theorist, but on that note, what did Clarkson used to say? And on that bombshell, yeah, I'll be back tomorrow for more of the same. I've got a bit of an idea in my head about, anyone aware of the notion of the doomsday clock? It's like a notional representation of the danger the world is in. And apparently it currently stands at 89 seconds to midnight. If it hits midnight, basically that's the world done and dusted. Bearing in mind all that we've just been talking about, the skill shortage, rising costs, and everything else that goes on in demolition and construction, I'm kind of thinking we need a doomsday clock for our industry. Maybe proposing that on tomorrow's morning monologue, if I can get it straight in my head before then. Until then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. Thoroughly enjoyed your company, as always. Look after yourselves today. I'll see you.